For context, I, 42 female, married my current husband, Jake, 45 male, 3 years ago, after a long tumultuous divorce from my ex-husband, Eric, 44 male. My marriage to Eric ended when I discovered he had been cheating on me for over a year. It was a devastating period in my life. I found out about Eric's infidelity through a mutual friend who caught him out with another woman. At first, I didn't want to believe it. I confronted him, and he denied it repeatedly until I found undeniable proof. Texts, photos, and even receipts from hotel stays. When the truth came out, Eric tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was too busy with work and our daughter, Lily, 17 female, to pay attention to him. It was a cruel and manipulative tactic, but I stood my ground. I refused to accept his excuses, and after months of arguments, counseling attempts, and broken promises, I filed for divorce. The divorce process was long and messy, with Eric fighting me over custody and finances. Ultimately, we agreed on shared custody of Lily, and I walked away determined to rebuild my life. For years after the divorce, I was focused solely on Lily and my career. I worked hard to provide a stable home for her and ensure she felt loved despite the upheaval in our lives. I didn't date for a long time because I wanted to heal and prioritize my daughter's well-being. Then, 5 years ago, I met Jake. Jake and I met through mutual friends at a small dinner party. He was charming, funny, and kind. Everything I had convinced myself didn't exist in a man after my experience with Eric. We started out as friends, and over time, our bond grew. Jake was patient and understanding, never pressuring me to move faster than I was comfortable with. He respected my boundaries and took the time to get to know both me and Lily. When we started dating, Jake made an effort to connect with Lily. He attended her school events, helped with homework, and even learned about her interests to try and bond with her. However, Lily was hesitant from the start. She'd grown close to Eric after the divorce, and I think she saw Jake as a threat to that relationship. I tried to talk to her about it, but she always shut down the conversation. Jake proposed 2 years into our relationship, and we got married a year later. I was thrilled to have found someone who genuinely loved and respected me. While Jake's relationship with Lily wasn't perfect, I believed things would improve with time. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. About a year ago, Jake began acting differently. He became withdrawn and started doubting my loyalty. At first, I thought it was work stress or something unrelated to us, but his behavior grew more distant. He'd ask me strange, pointed questions about where I'd been and who I'd talked to. I couldn't understand what had changed until last week when everything came crashing down. Jake confronted me one evening. He asked me point blank if I'd been seeing Eric behind his back. I was floored. I denied it immediately, but Jake pressed on, saying Lily had told him that I'd been meeting up with Eric in secret. According to Jake, Lily claimed to have seen messages on my phone and even accused me of sneaking out to meet Eric. I was furious and confused. Next day, when Lily came back from her father, I demanded she explain herself. At first, she tried to deny everything, but when I wouldn't let it go, she broke down and admitted to making up the lies. She said she wanted me to get back together with her father because she missed the idea of us being a family. She believed that if Jake was out of the picture, Eric and I would reconcile. I was stunned. I told her, point blank, that her father and I would never get back together. I reminded her why our marriage ended, because he cheated and shattered my trust. I also explained how much Jake means to me and how hard he's worked to be a part of our family. I demanded she tells Jake the truth and apologizes. She hesitated, but I made it clear that if her lies led to the end of my marriage, I would have no choice but to ask her to leave the house. Lily reluctantly agreed to speak to Jake. The next evening, we all sat down together. Jake looked emotionally exhausted, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. Lily began speaking, her voice shaky and hesitant. She apologized for lying, but phrased it in a way that made it sound like she was being forced to come clean. I made everything up, she said, glancing nervously at me. Mom didn't do anything wrong. Jake's expression didn't change. He asked Lily why she lied, and she hesitated again before muttering something about wanting her parents back together. She seemed half-hearted in her apology, and it was clear Jake wasn't convinced. The damage had already been done. What I didn't know at the time was that Lily had another plan. After our conversation, she went to Jake privately and spun a different story. She told him I had threatened to kick her out unless she confessed to lying, and she doubled down on her claim that Eric and I had been seeing each other. Then, to make matters worse, she called Eric and convinced him to back her up. Eric, who has always enjoyed stirring the pot, went along with her lies and told Jake we'd been having an affair. The next morning, Jake packed his bags. He told me he couldn't stay in a marriage built on deceit and that he needed time to think. I begged him to listen to me, but he refused. A few days later, he served me with divorce papers. I'm devastated. I had lost the man I love because of my own daughter's lies. When I confronted Lily about what she'd done, she didn't seem remorseful. She claimed she was just trying to do what was best for the family. That was the final straw for me. I told her she needed to leave. I couldn't look at her after everything she'd done. Her lies had cost me my marriage, and her actions showed a complete lack of respect for me and my happiness. I've spent years putting her needs first, and this is how she repays me? She broke down crying. I just wanted my mom and dad back together, she sobbed. Her words cut deep, but I couldn't ignore the damage she'd caused. I told her I couldn't let her stay after everything that had happened. It wasn't just about Jake. It was about trust and respect, both of which she'd destroyed. Now my mother is furious with me. She called me cruel for kicking my own daughter out over a man, saying I'm prioritizing Jake over Lily. I tried to explain that it wasn't about choosing Jake over her, but about holding Lily accountable for her actions. My mother refuses to see it that way and has been telling other family members that I've abandoned my child. Lily moved in with Eric. He's been feeding into her narrative, painting me as the villain. I'm heartbroken and torn. I miss Jake, but I don't know if there's any way to repair the damage. And while I love my daughter, I can't ignore the pain she's caused or the trust she shattered. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for kicking my daughter out after her lies cost me my marriage? OP's daughter deliberately sabotaged OP's marriage and then doubled down on her lies. Actions have consequences, and she needs to learn that. OP has spent years prioritizing her needs, but that doesn't mean she can treat OP like this. It's not about choosing a man over your daughter. It's about demanding respect and honesty. If she can't understand that, then she needs to face the consequences of her actions. Hopefully, with time, she'll grow up and realize the pain she caused. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I feel for you, OP, but this is such a heartbreaking situation. Lily is still young, but what she did was calculated and cruel. While I understand she misses the idea of her parents being together, sabotaging your current relationship is not the way to fix her feelings. Eric sounds like he's manipulating her and fueling this toxic narrative. I hope you and Jake can find a way to heal from this. If not, at least take solace in knowing you did everything you could to protect your marriage and your happiness. Honestly, Eric sounds like a manipulative jerk, and it's no surprise Lily picked up some of that behavior. She's been influenced by his drama, and it's clear he enjoys stirring the pot. You're right to set boundaries, even if it's hard. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing her to continue disrespecting you. I hope she realizes the damage she's done, but until then, you've done the right thing by holding her accountable. Your mom calling you cruel is frustrating. She's ignoring how destructive Lily's actions were and how much she hurt you. You're not kicking her out over a man. You're doing it because she wrecked your trust and jeopardized your happiness. Your daughter isn't a child anymore. She's 17 and old enough to understand the consequences of lying. Maybe this tough love will teach her an important lesson. Don't let anyone guilt trip you into tolerating this kind of betrayal. Update. After a lot of sleepless nights and endless thinking, I decided that I couldn't let things end the way they did. I went to Eric's house to see Lily. When I arrived, she was immediately defensive, accusing me of abandoning her and choosing Jake over her. I told her calmly that I wasn't there to argue, but to talk and to get her back home. After a lot of back and forth, Lily finally broke down. She admitted everything, the lies, the manipulation, and how much she regretted what she'd done. She said through tears that she didn't think it would spiral out of control and that she just wanted her parents back together. This time, I was prepared. I had my phone with me and recorded the entire conversation. I asked her very clearly multiple times why she had lied about me and Eric having an affair. Each time, she said because she wanted it to be true. She even admitted to getting Eric to back up her story just to drive Jake away. She was sobbing by the end, begging me to forgive her and let her come home. I left without saying much more. My emotions were all over the place, but I knew what I needed to do. When I got home, I sent the recording to Jake. I didn't say anything. I just let him listen to the truth in Lily's own words. A few hours later, Jake called me. He apologized for doubting me and for walking away without giving me the benefit of the doubt. He said he needed some time to process everything, but was open to talking. Over the next few days, Jake and I had several long conversations. It wasn't easy, and there's still a lot of hurt to work through, but we decided to give our marriage another chance. Jake moved back in last week, and we're slowly trying to rebuild what was almost destroyed. As for Lily, I've gone no contact with her. I told her that while I love her, I can't forgive her for what she's done. Not right now. She's been calling and texting nonstop, begging me to let her come home. She's even showed up at the house, crying and apologizing. But I can't let her back into my life until I'm sure she truly understands the damage she's caused. Right now, the betrayal is still too fresh. My mother, of course, has been vocal about how cruel I'm being. She keeps telling me that no man is worth losing my daughter over. What she doesn't understand is that this isn't about Jake. It's about trust, respect, and the fact that Lily's actions nearly destroyed everything I've worked so hard to rebuild. Forgiveness might come one day, but that day isn't today. For now, I'm focusing on healing my marriage and protecting my peace. Maybe in time, Lily and I can find a way to move forward, but it has to happen on healthier terms. Until then, this is where things stand. So, my wife came out as gay after 16 years of marriage and one child. She dropped the bomb about 3 months before she moved out of the house to move in with her lover of over 2 years. Our son chose to stay behind with me and still regularly talks to his mom. While consulting with my attorney about the pending divorce, he suggested filing a civil lawsuit against my ex's lover for being the cause of the marriage breakup. I followed his advice, and they were served with the papers. The following day, my ex and her lover confront me in front of our house, and it leads to a shouting match and my wife leaving in tears. Our son is indifferent about the suit, but deep down, I know he feels some resentment towards us both. I know it will be a long shot, but the suit to me is more symbolic. My way of extracting my pound of meat for 16 years of blood, sweat, and tears. It's my way of moving on, and even if nothing comes out of it, I will feel vindicated in some small way. Everyone sucks here. You. This is 100% out of spite and nasty. She's not coming back, and you are going to hurt everyone. Her, for carrying on a 2-year affair. Never okay. Your wife is gay and would have left anyways for another woman eventually. She's at fault. The other woman or man that comes between a relationship should never be faulted this much in comparison to the person that owes you their respect and loyalty. They're still going to be together, and she's still going to be gay. You're in the wrong here, and are being childish. A messy, petty divorce is not something your child should see, and they're probably already confused and hurt as it is. Don't make it worse by doing this. Also, you should be embarrassed for trying to sue the woman your wife was ducking while she was with you. Everyone sucks here. Her for having an affair, obviously. When she realized she was gay, she should have ended the marriage before carrying on an affair. You, however, you're doing this out of spite. You're willing to hurt your child's mother because your feelings were hurt. She's gay. She would have realized it and left you eventually. You need to move on with your life and quit the petty crap. That's just going to drag the hurt out even longer. Not the a-hole. I'm assuming you would have filed this suit regardless of what gender your wife's lover was. The entire notion of not being discriminatory is that everyone should be treated the same. I would say you're in the clear here. If you're only filing the suit because she came out as gay, then you would be an a-hole. Not the a-hole. She shouldn't have participated in an affair if she didn't want consequences. My ex and I divorced 12 years ago. We had 2 kids together, who were 11 and 9 at the time. The then 11-year-old wanted to live with me, and while he saw his dad, he really only wanted to spend weekends and holidays, which my ex supported. The then 9-year-old originally had the same arrangement, but eventually asked to live with her dad. After lots of talking, we agreed, and my daughter would originally see me 3 days a week and on holidays. Then my ex met his new wife. Together, they pretty much alienated my daughter from me. They bought her expensive trips and presents I couldn't afford, bringing our son too, also lavishing him, while also trash-talking me. By 14, my daughter refused to see me. I fought for her and begged that we go to therapy, talk it out, but her mind was made up, and the judge basically said that she was old enough to choose who to live with. I'd see her on the occasional holiday after that when her brother talked her into it, but we haven't spoken in 3 years. It hurt, a lot. I tried reaching out when she was 18, hoping maybe it would do some good, and she told me to screw off. I ended up in therapy, alone for this, and dealt with the trauma of basically losing a child to parental alienation. I eventually came to realize that I would never again trust my ex, who stopped talking to me, his wife, or my daughter. Fast forward to now. My son is now 23 and doing well for himself. My daughter is 21 and recently reached out. She said that she was sorry, that she loved me, and that she wanted a relationship. I dug deeper and found out my ex and his wife had cut her off for dropping out of college, and really what she needed was financial support. But she kept reiterating that she wanted to be close again. I told her no. I said I loved her and always will, but she hurt me deeply and I don't think I can ever trust her again. She started crying and I told her I could send her job listings in low-cost apartments. I also told her if she's genuinely interested in reconnecting, reach out once she's found her footing. She hung up. My son says I should have taken her in and has accused me of being a bad mom. I'm really conflicted on if I'm being a jerk here. Edit. Many have asked how I know she's just after money or if I just invented that. She told me that she wanted money and a place to stay. At first she was saying, "I love you, I'm sorry," and I was buying it. And then she mentioned moving back in and me lending her money. I asked why, and she told me why. I asked, if your dad hadn't kicked you out, would you have called me? She was quiet, and that gave me my answer. Also, no, I had no creepy husband at the time to drive her away. I only started dating again a couple years ago. Not the a-hole. You went to therapy for 7 years over the loss of your daughter, who wanted nothing to do with you. She's only reaching out for money and financial support. Protect yourself. Also, talk to your therapist about this situation. Get her feedback. Also, your ex and his wife are a-holes. Everyone sucks here except the kids. Your ex and his wife alienated a child and turned her against you, and you're now punishing her for it. While you might think the timing is suspect, 21 is a pretty normal age to come to realizations about your parents. Example, realizing that all the terrible stuff your dad told you about your mom probably isn't true, and trying to reconcile that relationship. Plus, global pandemic, dropping out of college, being cut off from dad. These are all tumultuous things that have probably made her reflect on her life and the situation she finds herself in. Again, leading to the realization outlined above. Don't blame your daughter for being brainwashed by her father. You absolutely don't need to provide any financial support, but putting stipulations on your relationship with her is probably reaffirming some of the lies that were put to her growing up. Now your son thinks you're a bad mom. Is that really how you want both of your kids to see you? Wouldn't you rather try to build a relationship with them both? Not the a-hole. If she truly cares about you, she'll work on a relationship without asking for money. You can tell her you're willing to meet as long as she asks for nothing. I, 31 female, went no contact with my dad, 57 male, 3 years ago. In short, my childhood was not great. Because my mom has always been out of the picture, my dad had to raise me alone, but didn't have the parental skills to do so. I won't go into too much detail, but I've spent my entire childhood being mostly ignored by him while he was living his own life. The attention I did get was mostly in the form of verbal aggression, when I stepped too far out of line for him to ignore me, or when I got in the way of something he wanted to do. He's had a stream of dysfunctional relationships with women, 7 of whom lived with us at some point, and who have all traumatized me in different ways. I don't have a single memory of my dad comforting me or taking an honest interest in my life. My paternal grandmother, 87 female, has been everything to me that my dad is not. She is the one who showed up to every school play, who's taken me in for weeks at a time when living with my dad was just too difficult, who regularly calls to ask about my life, and who just generally cares about me. If not for her, I'm not sure I would be the semi-functional grown-up that I am today. She is everything to me. My dad has made a big fuss to me and the rest of the family, including my grandmother, about me going no contact and paints me as the heartless daughter who has shunned her poor father, who did his best despite being a single parent. He texts me once in a while wanting to reconnect, but I reject him every time. His messages are never loving nor apologetic, but rather have an air of, "Are you finally done being unreasonable? If so, I'm graciously willing to forgive you." While the situation hasn't affected how often I see my grandmother, it has devastated her. I would have expected her to respect my decision, since she's seen what my dad has put me through. But she continues to pressure me to forgive him and move on because that's what family does. She simply will not accept that I'm not just throwing a hissy fit that she can help me snap out of. 10 days ago, my grandmother fell severely ill and was admitted to the hospital. She's stable now, but for 6 days, none of us knew if she would make it or not. During this time, the pressure from my dad and grandmother intensified. My grandmother literally begged me in tears to talk to my dad, while he texted me several times that I should be ashamed for remaining stubborn at a time like this and putting my sick grandmother through additional stress. I have refused to budge, even though I know that I am causing her great pain and that she won't be here forever, and now I feel like a horrible person. A few other family members have begun adding to the pressure as well. My boyfriend is on my side, but it feels like he is the only one, and I don't know what to do at this point. I need to know if I'm an a-hole in need of a reality check. Not the a-hole. They are trying to use her condition to manipulate you, and that isn't right. Though your grandma sounds old school, and she probably really does believe you should forgive your dad and have a relationship with him. You can always pretend to, and then go right back to no contact when she either recovers or passes away. Not the a-hole, but your grandma and dad are. Your grandmother enables your dad's crappy parenting. She's okay with him treating you like trash when it doesn't appease him. She may have been there for your childhood, but she doesn't have your back now. She knows how he treats you, but still wants you to apologize to him. Where's his or her apology for letting this go on? You're not obligated to forgive or apologize to your aggressor. Not the a-hole. Do not let the toxic a-hole back into your life. They are using her condition to manipulate you. Don't fall for it. Just be gentle and firm with her. Reiterate your position, then change the subject when she brings it up. Let them know, nicely, that it's not up for debate and it's not negotiable. During my wife's family reunion, I noticed that her cousin would make verbal jabs about my wife's work and our parenting. It started off subtle with comments to my wife like, "I know you work remotely, but that's not really a good career path vertically." To, "You have a college degree. Why aren't you more ambitious? I would be." I mentioned the comments to my wife and she noticed them too, but said to ignore her since she just broke up with her long-term boyfriend and was acting out. She said this was a pattern of her cousins. I did as she asked, but I drew the line when the cousin began criticizing our parenting, such as our kids' diets. No judgment. Cousins all organic foods and plant-based diets. And how we discipline our children. We do timeouts while she's an advocate of spanking. She comments, "If they were my kids," to finally, "I don't even know why you have children. You don't deserve them." After this, I spoke to her in private and said her opinions regarding our kids were unwelcome, and as she was not a parent and did not have close relationships with our kids, she had no clue what she was talking about. I also told her she was acting jealously towards my wife and that it was obvious to her family. My wife's career choices are none of her business, and it seemed she resented the work-life balance my wife had achieved. The cousin teared up, didn't say anything, and ran to her room. For the rest of the reunion, she didn't join activities or shared meals. Word spread, and most of the in-laws thanked me for defending my wife, especially my mother-in-law and father-in-law. My wife scolded me, but was grateful since it would have led to a shouting match between them. However, my wife's aunt, cousin's mom, said I was an a-hole, as her daughter was going through a rough time and it was haunting her to see her cousin doing so well when she was still unmarried and had no kids. I replied that I didn't say anything until she brought up our kids, and that her jealousy didn't excuse poor behavior. The aunt said I should be ashamed for kicking someone when they were down, depressed, and suffering. I felt bad since I didn't know how badly she was mentally. Am I the a-hole for calling out cousin-in-law's jealousy when she was already down? Depression, even clinical depression, doesn't give you the right to be an unbridled a-hole to people with no consequences. She was cruel and said much that crossed the line. But saying you don't deserve your children is so far over the line she can't even see it anymore. She's lucky your response was so mild. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole at all. Cousin needed to hear it. I agree that it's a jealousy thing. She teared up when you said this to her because she knows it's true. Don't feel bad for calling her out. You and your wife have been feeling crummy this whole time she's been making these comments, and you've been nice. You drew a line in the sand to protect your family. Nothing wrong with that. Cousin's mom can guilt you by saying cousin is depressed all she wants. But if she wasn't in the headspace to deal with the fallout, she shouldn't have been dishing it out in the first place. So that argument is null. Cousin owes your wife and you an apology. Being depressed doesn't give you the right to be a jerk. For duck's sake, saying you don't deserve your kids? The aunt is out of her mind to think you did anything wrong here. Not the a-hole. You did the right thing standing up for your wife and kids. The cousin may be going through a rough time, but that doesn't excuse her behavior at all. There are much better ways to deal with emotions than lashing out like that. It's the birthday of my ex's fiancée next month, and she's planning a huge birthday vacation. She asked me if my son could go with them, and I told her no. In the beginning, she made it seem like she really wanted him to be there because she wanted to bond with her future stepson since the wedding is soon. However, it came out later she was only inviting him because my ex told her he couldn't go because he wanted to spend time with our son, as our son recently asked him directly if he didn't love him because he wasn't around a lot. The reason I said no is because my son has repeatedly told me she's mean. She's yelled at his nanny in front of him, making her cry, which really upset him. She has yelled at him when he asked her to play multiple times. She tried to force him to eat food he hated to the point he started crying, and my ex had to intervene and ask her what the hell she was doing, etc. I don't want my son in a foreign country with her, even if my ex and some of his family will be there too. At first, when I said no, she tried to convince me to change my mind. As that hasn't worked, she's now calling me names and saying I'm jealous of her relationship with my ex, which is why I want to ruin her birthday. She also said I want to ruin my ex's relationship with our son, which isn't true. My ex did ask me to reconsider too, but I told him no as well. At first, he got angry at me, but yesterday he told me he was sorry and just stressed. I'm not sure if he was being genuine though, or just changing tactics. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. You are doing absolutely the right thing. You are protecting your son. I hope your ex wakes up and sees her true colors before he makes the mistake of marrying her. Not the a-hole, OP. You have to protect your son against all odds. Don't be guilted into making a decision. If, as a fiancé, initially she's mean to your son, imagine later once she's married and holds more power. Her behavior will change. This issue is way past a birthday vacation, and I would sincerely be worried about son's well-being when he himself has complained about her. Not sure of how much your ex knows, though. Not the a-hole. If your ex was really interested in a better relationship with your son, he would end things with his fiancé. She's going to get worse after the wedding. Be vigilant. I, 32 male, recently ended an 11-year relationship with my ex-girlfriend Laura, 31 female, after discovering she was cheating on me. I thought breaking up would be the end of it, but Laura's actions since have been so wild and entitled that I'm questioning my own sanity. Let me give you the full story. Laura and I met in college and started dating when we were in our early 20s. At first, it was great. She was funny, kind, and seemed to genuinely care about me. We had similar interests, and I thought we were building something long-term together. Over the years, I worked hard to create a stable life for both of us. While I'm not rich, I've always been financially stable and willing to share what I had. Laura, on the other hand, had a hard time finding her footing career-wise. She went through several part-time jobs, freelancing gigs, and periods of unemployment. She wasn't lazy, but she lacked consistency, and I wanted to support her. I covered most of the bills, rent, utilities, groceries, you name it, I paid for it. I ensured she had a comfortable life. I took care of the house, made sure it was a nice place to live, and provided for my 2 dogs who were like family to me. I spoiled her a bit. Hair and nail appointments, regular date nights, and even a couple of vacations each year. I never pressured her about money. While she contributed here and there, most of her income went toward her personal expenses, and I never complained. For 11 years, I believed I was building a future with someone who appreciated what I did for her. I loved her and thought she loved me too. But the last few months of our relationship revealed how wrong I was. It all started with little things. Laura became glued to her phone, constantly texting someone and laughing at her screen. She started going out more often, claiming she was meeting up with her friends, but she always avoided giving me specifics. She also became distant, less affectionate, less engaged in conversations, and less interested in spending time together. At first, I tried to brush it off. Maybe she was stressed, or maybe I was overthinking things. But then, one night, she left her phone unlocked on the couch while she went to the bathroom. I know it's not right to invade someone's privacy, but my gut was screaming that something was wrong. I looked, and there it was, a long string of messages between her and a guy named Kevin. The texts weren't just friendly, they were explicit. They talked about meeting up, how much they missed each other, and things I won't repeat here. I was devastated. The worst part was that I knew Kevin. He was my friend's brother. And even more shocking was that Kevin was unemployed, living with his parents, and didn't even have a car. Meanwhile, I'd been working my butt off to give Laura a good life, and she was sneaking around with someone who couldn't even afford a meal at McDonald's. I confronted Laura that night. At first, she denied everything. "He's just a friend," she insisted, despite the clear evidence to the contrary. When I didn't back down, she changed tactics. "You've been so distant lately. I didn't feel loved anymore." Not a shred of remorse, no apology, just excuses. That was the breaking point. I told her we were done, and she needed to move out. At first, she seemed stunned, like she didn't think I'd actually leave. But once the reality sank in, the entitlement began to show. Here's where things get crazy. After I told her to leave, Laura argued that I was being unfair by kicking her out. She claimed, 1, I should move out and keep paying the bills, since I had family nearby and she didn't. She said it would be easier for me to relocate. She wanted me to leave my own apartment, which I pay for, so she and Kevin could have a place to live. She also expected me to keep covering the rent and utilities until they got on their feet. 2, she should keep the dogs. My dogs, who I've had since before we met, are like my kids. Laura argued that they loved her more and would be happier staying with her. She said I could only visit them if I got Kevin's permission. Oh, and I'd still need to pay for their food and their vet bills. I told her in no uncertain terms that none of that was happening. I gave her a week to pack her things and leave. The dog stayed with me, no discussion. That's when she got angry, really angry. A few weeks after Laura moved out, I found out she'd quit her job. She claimed that relocating made it impossible for her to continue working. Then, she tried to sue me for lost wages, arguing that I had forced her to quit by making her leave the apartment. The lawsuit was laughable. We weren't married, and I didn't owe her a dime. My lawyer easily got the case dismissed. But instead of cutting her losses, Laura decided to escalate things. Since the lawsuit didn't work, Laura targeted my job. She contacted my employer, claiming that my actions had ruined her life and demanding they pay her $100,000 to settle out of court. For context, Laura didn't even make close to that amount in a year at her job. My employer wasn't having it. Instead of entertaining her demands, they filed harassment charges against her. At this point, I thought she'd finally back off. I was wrong. When the legal route didn't pan out, Laura turned her attention to my family. She messaged every single relative she could find on social media, telling them I had ruined her life out of spite and begging them for money to help her get back on her feet. She claimed I'd left her homeless and penniless and framed herself as the victim in all of this. Thankfully, my family saw right through her lies. Most of them blocked her immediately, but that didn't stop her from trying one more thing. Laura took her story to social media, posting tearful videos and setting up a Cash App account for donations. She claimed she was a victim of domestic violence, a blatant lie, and needed money to escape her abusive ex. Some people actually sent her money, but it wasn't enough to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown used to. Kevin, as far as I know, is still unemployed, so their situation hasn't improved. I've spent weeks replaying everything in my head, wondering if I handled things the right way. For over a decade, I supported Laura financially and emotionally. I gave her everything I could, and she threw it all away for a guy who can't even afford a bus ticket. And yet, she still seems to think I owe her something. We weren't married. We don't have kids. I owe her nothing. But her entitlement is so extreme that she genuinely seems shocked that I won't bankroll her new relationship. Cutting her off was the best decision I've ever made. But part of me still wonders if I could have avoided some of the fallout. Am I the a-hole? Laura's entitlement is staggering. She cheats on OP, then expects OP to pay for her and her new boyfriend's life? Absolutely not. The fact that she tried to sue OP, harassed OP's workplace, and manipulated OP's family shows how toxic she is. I just don't understand how OP didn't see it in 11 years. OP did the right thing by cutting her off. He needs to block her everywhere and move on. And now let's hear the community's opinion. Not the a-hole. The audacity of this woman is mind-blowing. She had a good life with you, and she ruined it. Now she expects you to keep supporting her? Absolutely not. You don't owe her anything. Good for you for keeping your dogs and standing your ground. As a fellow dog lover, I'm so glad you kept your pups. Laura's behavior is unhinged, and her attempts to manipulate everyone around you are pathetic. You've been more than generous for 11 years. Don't let her guilt you into anything. Move on and enjoy your new peace. Not the a-hole. Laura played stupid games and is now winning stupid prizes. She cheated, lied, and then had the nerve to demand your money and home? You've done everything right by cutting her off. Let her and Kevin figure out their mess. They're not your problem anymore. My dad has 2 siblings, one of which is my entitled aunt, which we will call EA. So, about a year back, my grandma and granddad passed away, Dad's parents, leaving everything to be inherited by their 3 children and their respective families. So, we all came to an agreement as a whole family that we will wait a long while before even setting foot in the house, because my grandpa and granddad were a big part of our family life. Everything was going okay for a few weeks, until my entitled aunt decided that she wanted to clear out the house to sell it for money. Entitled aunt decided that she would take all of the things inside the house, including some furniture like sofas, tables, etc., back to her house and sort them out. From there, her family, my uncle and 2 cousins, took what they wanted to keep from my grandma and granddad's belongings. They then called my other uncle, Dad's other sibling, and allowed his family to get what they wanted as keepsakes. Then called us a week later to come and choose one thing each. Bear in mind that they all got a lot of things to keep. We were furious and originally refused to come and take anything because the time wasn't right, as they'd only just passed away. My dad was furious and had multiple arguments with my entitled aunt and entitled uncle about respect for his parents. My entitled aunt then proceeded to guilt trip my dad for weeks, telling him he never even cared about his parents, which was completely wrong because my dad was completely devoted to my grandma and granddad and was distraught when they passed. Eventually, after a couple of months, we decided to go and collect some of my grandma and granddad's belongings as keepsakes to help our family grieve. My entitled aunt refused to let us in the house, calling us rude and disrespectful, and saying we don't deserve the luxury of having our own family's belongings. Eventually, we got to keep some things as keepsakes, after a long argument in front of the whole of my aunt's street. But this was only the beginning. A few weeks after this, we found out that my entitled aunt was renovating the house my grandma and granddad lived in so that her daughter, entitled cousin, and her fiancé could live in it. She refused to let us near the property, claiming it as her own, and every time we reached out to entitled cousin, she ignored our calls and messages, until entitled aunt told us to leave them alone because the house is none of their business. Around this time, we also found out that entitled aunt had seized my grandma and granddad's bank account details and had full access to all of the money that was in the account. The will stated that the money would be shared between the 3 of the siblings, my dad, entitled aunt, and my other uncle. But entitled aunt wanted it all to herself, which was no surprise considering how she had been acting. My dad wasn't even angry. He was just destroyed. He was being made to watch my entitled aunt destroy the beautiful legacy of my grandma and granddad, all because of her greed. Weeks went by, and my dad decided he wanted to get some kind of revenge on my entitled aunt. My dad is a builder and owns his own building company. A year or so before the passing of my grandparents happened, my dad carried out a roof renovation and garage conversion on my entitled aunt's house, one which he didn't make them pay any money for. He did it out of the goodness of his heart, for his family. My dad decided, after the way my entitled aunt and uncle had been acting, that he wanted his money for the roof renovation, and my entitled aunt flipped at him, calling him selfish and threatening to take him to court, calling him a cowboy builder, which means he just wants the money and did a terrible job, which he didn't. This destroyed our family for weeks and caused a long chain of fights which mostly consisted of my entitled aunt refusing to pay. This is when my entitled uncle really gets involved. This is a guy who isn't even related to my grandparents by blood. He's just married into the family. My entitled uncle gets on the phone and tells my dad that he will come to our house and beat my dad to a pulp for being so selfish and heartless during this painful time for my entitled aunt. At this point, my whole family is furious. My entitled uncle is clearly out of line, and my entitled aunt is twisting this entire thing, which is destroying my dad, who is just trying to mourn the loss of his parents. This was the breaking point for my dad's relationship with his sister, entitled aunt, and the whole thing ended with my dad telling entitled aunt that he will take her to court for the way her and my entitled uncle have acted. After this whole thing, we received many malicious messages from their family and have completely disassociated ourselves from them. I haven't spoken to them since this happened, and we all prefer to keep it that way. This situation put my dad in an extremely dark place, and it still gets him down. Since then, we have seen entitled aunt and entitled uncle around town and at family events, and they've been quite hostile to us. One time, entitled uncle barged into my sister and said some really rude things to me whilst we were out in our town. Safe to say, both my mom and dad were furious. Since then, we haven't seen them though, and they've become irrelevant to our lives. I'd say I miss them, but I know I miss the old version of them, one which is long gone. Take her to court. She's technically stealing, as the money was supposed to be divided between the three families, right? If she comes back to bother us anymore, I imagine that's exactly what my dad will do. It's been 9 years since I've seen my uncle and his wife, who will be henceforth known as Uncle and Ice Witch, as that is what I call them. This was the end of May 2010. I was just finishing my first year at my community college when everything took place. To be more specific, it was final exam week. The Sunday before finals week started, I was at the mall taking a well-deserved break from studying math when I get a call from my mom. Basically, I had to get home immediately because Uncle had called, and they, and his two 30-something children, were 2 hours from arriving at my house. This was a bit of a surprise, as we lived in Florida while the rest of them were in California, New Jersey, and Connecticut. 2 hours was all the warning we had that we were about to be invaded. Over the phone, my mom said she had pleaded with them to not come, or at least to stay in a hotel, as I still had school. She was told that family came first, and besides, I was going to drop out anyway, like the rest of them. I rushed home and started cleaning. My room had to be cleaned out of anything not baby-proofed, as my cousin was with his wife and toddler son. For the record, both cousins had no idea that we were in the dark about them coming. They are amazing people, and their kids have grown up to be wonderful as well. They are innocent in this. Most of my stuff ended up in some plastic containers that we put in the garage. This consisted of all my manga, some personal favorite books, statues, posters, my gaming system, etc. Basically items of value. It's not that I didn't trust my cousins. I wanted to hide them from the Ice Witch. You'll see why. Uncle and Ice Witch arrived first. Mom had left to get my cousins from the airport, so I was all alone in the house waiting. I opened the door, and the first thing I hear is, "See? I told you she wasn't studying. She should just drop out." If my uncle had said that, I'd blow him off. But this was the Ice Witch. She broke up my uncle's marriage. She made him almost miss his son's wedding because my cousin-in-law is Hindu. She had told my mother again and again that all my occult items, anime, would lead me to worship the devil. She made it a nightmare to even speak to my uncle. She had thrown away so many Christmas gifts I'd sent to my uncle simply because she was a Jehovah's Witness and they would not be allowed in her house. No hate to any Jehovah's Witnesses. Sorry you may have had to deal with this woman. Me. Still not a dropout, just here to let you people into my house. Ice Witch. Excuse me? Me. Does it ever occur to you people that I'm 18 and I might have exams? If I was still in high school, I'd have classes. Your poor planning is going to screw up my next week. Ice Witch proceeds to start screaming that I'm an ungrateful child, that I have no right to talk to them, that my attitude is all my dead father's fault. Me. Yeah, right. My Disney-loving Air Force vet softball-playing father, who died of cancer, was the reason I have an attitude. No, that would be my Disney-loving Monty Python and Beatles worshipping Veterans Affairs worker mother, who has busted her butt for years to bring me up. No thanks to you doing everything in your power to keep me from having another connection to my mom's side of the family. Have you gone to a hotel yet? I have studying to do. I stormed back inside. Mom pulled up about 2 minutes later, and the Ice Witch unloaded on her. Mom's response? She's 18. She can say what she wants in my house. Besides, we weren't the ones who made reunion plans and told the entire damn family, without telling the host first. Now, stop squawking like a harpy and let's get inside. My neighbors didn't pay to see the whole 30-minute argument. Over the next 3 days, per my mom, because she wanted to see me succeed, thanks so very much, I did all I could to stay away from the house. I studied at school, did my exams, and basically hid out until dinner rolled around, which was when I was expected at home on a normal day. While I did great on most of my exams, the only one I had trouble was on my math, which had never been my strong suit. I lost valuable study time to constant interruptions via text, as the Ice Witch would take my mom's phone and text me an SOS, which would make me stop studying to call home to make sure all was okay, just to get lectured. Mom put a stop to it, but the damage was done. After my last exam, I called my mom with the good news that I'd aced my Creative Writing 1 class. She said that everyone except the ice witch was about to head out to the beach, and I was invited. I said no, I was going to head to the bookstore and treat myself to a couple of good books, then head home. While at the bookstore, I picked up some manga and about 5 pro-LGBT YA novels. The ice witch had spent the previous evening telling the entire family that I would be going to hell, since she found one of my little statues in the garage, and it was of a girl. Therefore, I was a lesbian and going to hell. I'm bi, but who the hell cares? Also, the damn statue was of Edward Elric of FMA, not a damn girl. Everyone but my uncle told her to can it, as little toddlers listen, and little cousin was already speaking and repeating things. 18 months old at the time and was able to count to 20 in English, Spanish, and Hindi, from any point up to 15. He's now 11 and a smart aleck. I'm so proud. I'm not above a bit of petty revenge, and besides, I wanted to read them anyway. As I was leaving, I decided to spontaneously head out to the beach and join the rest of the family. Yes, I was in jeans and a t-shirt, but I wanted to spend time with the family that I actually liked, and I wasn't mad at. When we got home, the ice witch was all bent out of shape because I didn't stick to my word, changing my plans without considering her. And most importantly, she wanted to talk to me about being all this trash in the garage. But don't worry, she took care of it for me. Now, I'd like to say here that I exploded. I didn't. I froze. The stuff we packed up in the garage? Probably $2,000. Some stuff I brought home from a trip to Japan the previous year. I had a SNES and some rare games. My first console from 1995, which was enjoyed equally by my dad. Plus, my brand new PlayStation 3. I was a late adopter. Yeah, I was kind of in shock. No, instead of me going into a tizzy, my mom took care of it. She walked up to the ice witch and calmly said something. I hope you really didn't touch OP's things. She's worked hard to find something she loves. But if you did, please give her what the market value for her possessions is. But regardless, get the duck out of my house. Mom didn't swear, not like that, and especially never in front of someone under 10. She also valued family, as our little branch of the family is the black sheep of a rather decent-sized one in New Jersey. But what the ice witch forgot, and still forgets, was that while Mom would love to be with our family, she had one more important thing on her mind, her daughter, me. Because when my dad died, it was just us. When I struggled in school, she fought for me. When she got sick, exhaustion, I stepped up to the plate and took over her duties in the rec softball league I played for, and she was on the board of directors. We were a team against everyone. The ice witch turned tail and fled to the guest room. I ran for the garage. All of my things were shoved in trash bags inside the trash cans. Luckily, nothing was outright broken. Only a broken game case and a few torn covers on some manga, which I was okay with, since I was already planning on passing it on anyways. My cousins helped me carefully repack the items that weren't toddler-friendly into the storage containers and helped bring the books inside. Uncle was trying to reason with my mom, telling her that I was the rude one. I was the one who was being punished. Mom pointed out that punishment in her house was shutting off the Wi-Fi and password locking the TV. Worst case would be taking the power cable to my PS3. She never threw away the things I valued, because that wasn't punishment. That would be cruel in her eyes. Uncle and Ice Witch went to a hotel. The rest of us spent a quiet night at home, sharing memories, playing games on the PS3, and just resting. The cousins had decided to not take sides, but both privately made sure I was okay. They still had a relationship with their dad, but their stepmom was not part of the package. Actually, to this day they only call her by her first name to her face, and elsewhere they have adopted my name from here, away from the kids of course. After all was said and done, and everyone was safely in their own states, Mom got a series of emails, all from the Ice Witch. They started with false apologies and bogus explanations. Mom didn't reply to them. The final one, which is what broke the family, was where she flat out told Mom that she would have ended the pregnancy with me, or barring that, once Dad passed away and I got my attitude, Mom should have drowned me. Mom called my uncle. With my permission, she told him what a year after my dad died, in the midst of a depression, I contemplated suicide in the manner that the Ice Witch emailed. I didn't go through with it, obviously, and could credit anime for my survival. FMA Episode 3, Mother. Saw it on a rerun the night things got dark. I realized that people had it worse and I could be stronger. Mom told Uncle that the ice witch was never to contact us again. As long as he remained married to her, he wasn't welcome in our home. Like I said at the top, it's been 9 years. I'm now 28, college graduate with a degree in creative writing, hence the novella. Working on my first book, as well as a short story and poetry collection. We haven't spoken to Uncle or the Ice Witch since that day. Only thing I regret is that I never got my petty revenge with the LGBT books. But they were great to read, and I count them as a reward for not killing the Ice Witch after the last email, which we still have, just in case. As for the cousins, well, the toddler now has a little brother, and he loves hugging me. The older one just tells me I suck at Fortnite, and I have bad taste in anime. The kid likes Beyblade. He's the prince of bad taste. Throwing your things away is totally unwarranted. You're best off without people like that in your life. At least you have kept close to your cousins. Hopefully your uncle will see the light. I wouldn't count on it after this amount of time, though. First mistake. As soon as she made her first snarky remark, you didn't tell her to wait on the doorstep until your mother returned, and then shut the door in her face. Second mistake. You didn't install locks on the inside and outside of your bedroom door so it could be locked from either direction. With a lock, no need to put anything in the garage.